Hi and hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to solve the section C, and the questions are question number 10, 11 and 12 from section C. These are the questions from section C which carries 3 marks each. So let's start from question number 10. What is given? It is the question from chapter set. It is given that if A and B be two non-empty sets and A cross B equals to A cross B, product of A and B is equals to A cross C, then we have to prove that B equals to C. For that, let us consider one element which is present in this Cartesian product. Let X and Y be two elements which is present in A cross B, Cartesian product of set A and B. So from this we can write that X belongs to A and Y belongs to B. Let it mark it as 1. Again, X and Y belongs to A cross C. Then from here also we can write X belongs to A and Y belongs to C. So let it mark it as question number 2. So from these two equations 1 and 2, so these two parts, we can see that X is an element which is present in A for both the cases, isn't it? Present in set A. But Y is such an element which is present in set B and also in set C. So from 1 and 2 we can say that Y belongs to B, also Y belongs to C. So therefore B equals to C. We can conclude this with the help of considering elements in this way. So this was a very simple question, and the condition that is given A and B be two non-empty sets means phi is not the element of A and B. There will be some elements. So I have considered X and Y to be present in the Cartesian product of set A and B. So the next question, let us see the next question, question number 11. Yes, it's question number 11. So in question number 11, it is written that if R is an equivalence relation on a set A, then prove that R inverse is also a equivalence relation on A. So first let us consider that let A be a relation on set A. Then from the definition of this, we can write that R is subset of A cross A. Also from this we can write if R is a subset of A cross A, then R inverse is also a subset of A cross A. From this we can say that R inverse is also a relation on A. So likewise now I am going to prove that R inverse is an equivalence relation on set A. So for that we have to satisfy the three conditions, that is transitivity, symmetric and reflexive. So first let us consider the reflexive relation. For that let us consider an element A which is present. This is an element, correct, which is present, which belongs to set A. From there we can write that A cross A belongs to R. Fine. So now from here we can also write that A comma A belongs to R inverse. So R and R inverse is, it satisfies the condition of reflexive. Fine. Now let us see what the transitivity property tells us. How now R is reflexive from this relation. So now we will see that both R and R inverse are reflexive for this situation. So now we will see that how R and R inverse are transitive. For that, let us consider two elements A comma B belongs to R inverse. Fine. From there we can say that B comma A belongs to R. When it is we have considered A comma B element in R inverse, then the inverse of that will be B comma A, which belongs to R. In this case, both it is A and A because both the elements are same, which we have considered. So R and R inverse, it will not change because this is the first element, second element. It actually changes the position of the first element and second element. So now in this way, let us consider again B comma C belongs to R inverse, then C comma B belongs to R. So from this two we can write that B comma A belongs to R and C comma B belongs to R. From this we can say, from this two relation we can say C comma A belongs to R, which also implies that A comma C belongs to R inverse. So by defining this type, I have concluded that R and R inverse are what? Transitive. Transitive. Why? Because there exists, by considering first two elements, then we have entered another element C in this. So now we will see that whether R and R inverse are symmetric or not. So for that, let us consider A comma B. Again A comma B belongs to R inverse. From this B comma A belongs to R. Now if we consider A comma, what we have got that if A comma B belongs to, and if we consider it as R, then B comma A belongs to R inverse. So this states that R and R inverse are symmetric. That is, if we exchange the elements also, both will remain same. So now as R and R inverse are both reflexive, transitive and what? Symmetric. So we can say that if R is an equivalence relation on A, then R inverse is also an equivalence relation on set A. So I have solved question number 11. So let's see question number 12. For this video, these three questions I will be solving. So in question number 12, it is given that n belongs to capital. This is the question from the chapter integers. Small n is a number which belongs to natural number n, and value of n is greater or equals to 4. We have to show that factorial n is greater than n square. For this, let us consider function fn. Fn is equals to factorial n. So greater or equal to 4. So let's first see n equals to 1. For n equals to 1, f1 is equals to factorial 1. But this is greater than 1 squared? No. It is false. f2 equals to factorial 2. It is greater than 2 squared? No. f3 is factorial 3. Is it greater than 3 squared? It is also no. But f4 is equals to factorial 4, but the value of factorial 4 is greater than 4 squared, that is 16. It is true. And further going here, what the given condition has been satisfied, that if we go above the value of 4, that is 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever it is up to infinity, we will see that it satisfies this condition. Fn is equals to factorial n greater than n square. But if we have to prove it by the method of induction, then we have to consider an element k in the general form to prove it. So for that, let us consider n equals to k. Fine. So k greater equals to 4, we can conclude. So let us find f of k is equals to factorial k greater than k square. We can say that, isn't it? Yeah. Now, what is f of k plus 1? It will be factorial k plus 1. And what it is equivalent to? We know that factorial k plus 1 is k plus 1 into factorial k. And factorial k is always greater than equals to k square. And let us put this value as k value 4 plus 1. Why? The reason is that the value of whatever is the value of k, it should be greater equal to 4. So let us take the minimum number 4 and put it here, and for this part I have written k square. You know this one, factorial k is greater than k square. So now it will become that 4 plus 1 into k square, it will be 4k square. 4k square. So now greater than 4 square. 4k square greater than 4k square. Now which is equals to what? 2k whole square. 2k can be written as k plus k. K plus k whole square. So it is 1, either k plus 1. I have again put the value of k as 1. So it is greater than k plus 1 whole square. And now we have got the relation that f of k plus 1 is greater than what? F of k plus 1 is greater than k plus 1 whole square. Yes. F of k plus 1 is greater than k plus 1 whole square. Actually, by the what do you mean by the method of induction? The method of induction implies that if we consider an element k, if we prove that f of k is equals to factorial k greater than k square, then similarly for the next value, k is a value which we have considered, universal general form of a value. So for k plus 1 also it will satisfy this condition which we have to prove. To say that by the method of induction, as we have proved that for k also it is greater than factorial what? K is greater than k square. So for k plus 1 also it is greater than k plus 1 whole square. So now by the method of induction we can say that f of n is equals to factorial n. We can say that factorial n is greater than n square. So this is the method, this is the type. In previous only we have proved that by putting value also we can prove it, and by the method of induction we have to prove it because this is in general form we have to prove that f of n is equals to n greater than n square. So in my next video I shall solve the remaining three questions from section B which were left out. That is question number 7, 8 and 9. Thank you.